Welcome, Stephanie. I am so excited to chat with you today. And to start with, I would love for you to share with my audience more about you, what got you to want to be a dietitian. And I know, obviously, you work with Whole30. You have a really unique background, and I love everything that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. So I just thought about this the other day. I've been a dietitian for over 10 years now, which time just flies when you're having fun and doing a bunch of different things with your job. So I got into the world of nutrition. My dad was diagnosed with cancer and he was trying to figure out ways, and I was in middle school at this time, ways that I could help him. I wasn't used to seeing him in this like defeated state. And all I wanted to do is just help him feel more calm and confident. And what I knew I could do is help him with something he was doing 3 or more times a day, which is eating. And so my love of nutrition and being able to use it as medicine in a way for people to really feel empowered mentally and physically when maybe everything else in their life is like 2020 and doesn't feel in control, using that food to really equip him. So in middle school, I decided that I really wanted to learn about nutrition, but I also wanted to learn about psychology. So even in high school, I was the one that was reading the nutrition books, and not really necessarily from a diet perspective, but like, how could we use this to really help heal our bodies and to nourish our minds? So, why I decided to also minor in psychology is because when you get down to it, a lot of people know what they need to eat, but putting that knowledge into practice is really difficult. I work with high powered CEOs who they are at the peak of their career. They know a lot of things, they are highly educated, and they're still struggling with the same things that we all are. Right? We're all, even dietitians come to me and they work with me. And I've worked with other dietitians before too, because you can know what to eat, but putting it into practice, especially when you're a mom, is a different story. And so what I decided to do with my career, and what I'm doing currently now is I've aligned with the Whole30 team because I really respect what they're doing. And for those who haven't heard of Whole30 or haven't done one, Whole30 is a elimination and reintroduction protocol where you eliminate what the scientific research and what years of experience have shown us are foods that could be inflammatory for you. So we're eliminating things like sugar, alcohol, grains, legumes, and dairy. And we're doing that for a period of 30 days, reintroducing those back systematically one by one to see if those foods do or do not work for your body. And from there, crafting a food freedom plan. So I work with them right now and I do a lot of the education and really helping people with that second half, with that reintroduction and that food freedom, helping them navigate all of the noise that's out there in the nutrition world and find a plan that works for them. And my favorite population is that preconception through postpartum, because there's a lot of noise out there as far as what you should do. And there is so much significance that can take place in both helping babies grow up and get the proper nutrients that they need in the womb, and helping moms really replete everything that they give to their babies during those 9+ months so that they can thrive and not just survive the rest of their postpartum experience.
Oh my gosh, you said so many amazing things. Which one do we want to talk about first? Um, okay, since it was one of the last things you mentioned, is really the depletion that moms have. Let's start there because I think as moms, right, especially like you're having babies and you're putting all of your energy into that little one or multiples, right? If you've got a toddler running around too, right? And even for our moms listening that have kids that are a little bit older, like if you've never really re-nourished your body, you could still be dealing with some depletion. I always like to mention that because
Yeah.
sometimes I get moms that are like, well, Erica, like my littlest is like 10, right? And my youngest now is almost 9. So I totally hear you. But if we haven't really ever re-nourished our body, right, you could actually still be suffering from some symptoms and things that actually are from pregnancy because baby will take from mom what baby needs. Baby's going to be fine. And
Yeah.
it's mom that ends up really like suffering from it. So let's start there. What do you have? What advice do you have or nutrition tactics? Um, And even, the mental side of it too, of like, how can we really flip the switch for our moms, and to like really prioritize their nutrition too.
Yeah, I think so much of this, ideally, if we can work before the pregnancy even happens, is ideal, right? Because when we're thinking about that preconception period, we're talking about women that have been on the birth control pill for 10 plus years. That's not unheard of in my practice. We are talking about people that maybe are on medications that can deplete nutrients. So, for example, if you've been on metformin, that's going to significantly deplete B12, which is essential for mental health and energy and metabolism. And so moms may be feeling low even before they get pregnant. And then, of course, like if they're going into a second pregnancy within 2 years of their first, there's not repleted. So that preconception period is a great place to start if you can. That's not always going to be the case. But when we're looking at that preconception period, a healthy diet absolutely is important, but a healthy diet often doesn't cut it for a lot of the nutrients that we're looking at because of soil depletion and because of poor digestion and absorption, because we don't have enough stomach acid and all of that. So if I can get a mom before she conceives on a prenatal vitamin about 3 months or so before she conceives, that's going to help us, give us like that insurance policy for when she does conceive in that first trimester, when I'm sure you can relate, it's very challenging, even if you consider yourself a healthy eater, to get that proper nutrition. So these depletions really start at before moms conceive. And then in that first trimester, it can be really difficult because I think we all have the intention of feeling ourselves well when we're pregnant, right? We have like, oh, I'm going to eat really healthy and yeah, I'm going to have my ice cream too, but I have this goal of nourishing the baby. And when that doesn't happen, that can feel really depleting and just really frustrating for the mom. But what I like to tell moms is that, you are doing such a good job, and it sounds like your audience is very aware of health and nutrition already. So if you're in that first trimester, definitely do your best, rely on that prenatal vitamin that's going to help carry you through, and know that you have eaten well before you conceived, and you're going to continue to eat well after that first trimester and into your postpartum to help deal with all of that. So when it comes to being nutrient replete, a lot of it comes from our diet, making sure we are hitting the core nutrients that we're often deficient, and identifying what those are. So let's talk about those right now. So when I'm doing nutrient testing with moms, the nutrients that I'm often finding deplete are B12. And this is a case even if you are eating animal protein. I think sometimes we only think B12 applies to vegan or vegetarians, but I'm seeing B12 deficiencies in mom. Omega-3, so EPA and DHA, because so many of us aren't having fatty fish in our diet 3 times a week, especially if you are a mom. It's hard to maybe get your family to eat that fatty fish, and maybe you don't want to waste and all of that. So omega-3s are important. Zinc is another really important one. So zinc is what we're going to find in animal foods and in things like shellfish. Oysters are a huge source of zinc, and pumpkin seeds are really important as well. Zinc is one that I find can play a significant role in mental health and in mood for moms. So, and that's because of the copper and zinc interplay that happened during pregnancy with estrogen. So zinc is another one to be aware of. And then vitamin D. So vitamin D is something that if you're pregnant, oftentimes you have to ask your provider to do that testing for you, which I found really interesting. Did you get your vitamin D levels tested, or did your provider ask?
If they did, I don't remember specifically, since
Yeah.
I feel like when I talk now to pregnant moms and do that, I'm like, so much has shifted in the almost
Yes.
10 years since I had my last one. I mean, I remember a big shift from, okay, my oldest is almost 14, just from her to my youngest, which is about 5 years. And it was, and so now it's been almost, another 9 years, almost.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that like wow, we've really shifted. I actually just had got back from a cranial sacral appointment, and she's
Oh,
pregnant. So we
nice.
have these fun
Yeah.
conversations, and she's very holistic, and we've talked a lot about, nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like the testing they're doing is definitely a little more advanced. Because I was going to ask you that when you mentioned the zinc versus copper.
Yeah.
So, are these becoming standard tests that are being done, or especially for pregnant? I mean, again, I mean, like whether you're pregnant, preparing for pregnancy, or again, you're not even ever been pregnant or whatever. I think these things can really be important as well, right? You said they can affect. Do you want to say a little bit more of how estrogen can be affected, or is it more so during pregnancy because our estrogen levels are so high that you need that little more boost of balance between zinc and copper and things like that?
Yeah, so because you have high estrogen levels during, especially the towards the end of pregnancy, that's gonna alter the zinc to copper balance, and then after you conceive, that ratio shifts,
Right.
and sometimes you actually don't have enough zinc to um, help deal with some of the mental health challenges in the postpartum period. And also it comes down to absorption, right? Because we need adequate
Yeah.
stomach acid to absorb the zinc, and vice versa. So that's part of it. And as far as the testing goes, no, these things aren't often checked during pregnancy and postpartum. And so you can definitely work with a functional medicine provider to get your levels checked. But the practical strategy is, okay, let's kind of zero in on what a healthy plate looks like and load some of these foods on the plate that are rich in these nutrients, along with staying on your prenatal vitamin after you have your baby. And really see if we can optimize there, and then work with a provider to fill in the gaps of what you might need.
So as far as though, say, if women don't have a functional doctor to go to,
Yeah.
they can just ask their regular OBGYN or physician to order, and you want to test zinc and copper and vitamin D and B12 and all that. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but even with B12s, even if their levels come back high enough, but they may still not be absorbing it because there can be some tricky stuff. Because I personally have it, and I've talked about this on either different podcasts or Instagram and stuff where I talk about like I personally need a little bit of lithium in order
Mhm.
to transport the B12s. And so I found a really great multivitamin that has, it's designed for genetics and helping to have all those, transporters in there to make sure we're actually absorbing them. So those are just things that I think are really important more and more as we understand genetics, or more and more physicians understand a little bit more about genetics and things to look for. So if like, I don't know what you recommend from like I have a lot of women who are like, yeah, I take a complex B vitamin. Do you recommend doing more of a complex or actually just B12?
Yeah, so it depends on what the person needs. If they come back with low B12, the B vitamins play really nicely together, right? So if it's a vegan or vegetarian and they've got very low B12 levels, we might be able to get away with just B12 on its own. But if I do like, because when you're looking at it from a food perspective, the B vitamins are going to be all together in one. So I like to do a B complex when I can, as long as they're okay with the other B vitamins being in there. They're not getting an overdose from other vitamins that they may be taking, right? Because adequacy is one thing, but sometimes giving too much can lead to unwanted effects as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That's a good point that you brought up.
yeah, yeah. And so, we talked a little bit about the prenatal vitamin, but some other ones that you might want to consider just to make sure sufficiency during pregnancy and postpartum are going to be the vitamin Ds, right? We talked about living in California. Even living in California, I was testing vitamin D levels, and the levels were low. And you would think, okay, somebody living in California, they would have adequate D because they've got the sun exposure, but we're putting sunscreen on. We might not be able to absorb as much. Maybe we're taking a shower immediately after sun exposure, and that can impact the amount of vitamin D that we actually produce in our body and absorb. So
I know
vitamin
that.
Yes, yeah. So, you come home from the beach and you immediately take a shower, and that can actually reduce the effect. So, prenatal vitamin D, magnesium is another huge one that I think we all should be considering supplementing, seeing as 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. And what's one nutrient that is hit when we're stressed? magnesium. Our body pulls magnesium to help us with that stress response, along with those B vitamins. So magnesium is another really great one, especially if you find yourself having waking up with like restless leg syndrome, or you have a hard time falling asleep at night, like a lot of moms do. Having that magnesium before bed can really help calm your central nervous system, and it helps with hundreds of biochemical reactions in the body. So magnesium is great. If you are constipated after you have your baby, magnesium citrate is fantastic for that. You want to dose slowly because it can work almost too well at times. So like the natural calm powders are great. If you are somebody that you aren't dealing with constipation, and constipation is defined as having a bowel movement every day, at least once a day, and having that bowel movement and coming off the toilet like smiling because you feel like you've completely eliminated everything. You're not struggling. You've got that Bristol stool chart, like perfect stool. Then if you're not constipated, magnesium glycinate is a really great form. And then if you are someone that is more at risk for mental health issues, magnesium threonate is the form that I usually recommend moms take to help with that.
Okay,
So you
thank
gotta,
you for clarifying those. Yeah, go ahead. And
yeah,
recap those.
for sure. So prenatal magnesium, vitamin D, and I usually do vitamin D3 with K2. So vitamin D3 with K2, the reason I recommend this is because K2 is going to help that calcium and vitamin D go into the bone versus circulating throughout the bloodstream. And when you've got too much calcium circulating through the bloodstream, that is what we are worried about when it comes to cardiovascular health and complications. So we want that calcium in the bone, especially as women. It's really important for us. And I like to do that in droppers because nobody likes to take a ton of supplements in capsule form. That's not fun. And then you can dose up to what you need. So for the moms that are listening that are nursing, the amount that is typically recommended is about 6,400 IUs of vitamin D. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow enough for the vitamin D to pass through your breast milk into your nursing baby, because nursing babies require an additional source of vitamin D for the first couple of months. So you can either give that vitamin D to yourself or give it to your baby if you're breastfeeding in drop form.
So how much if you were to give it just to a baby? Because I do drop vitamin D3K with myself and the kids, and it's really strong. Like one little drop, I think, is like 1,000 IU. So it goes. I love the liquid. I do liquid stuff with all my kids because they will not swallow pills. So it is a nice way to be able to get your kids to take other vitamins, and most of them they have like almost no flavor, right? So if you're going to give it to your baby, I'm assuming you would just, if you're giving it directly to your baby, you just do like one little drop, 1,000 IUs, or does your baby even need more than that?
That's a great question. So they actually have baby drops that are 400 IUs. And so that's easy. And honestly, if you give your baby 2 drops on accident, it's not a big deal. Just don't give it to them the next day. So vitamin D is a fat soluble nutrient, meaning that it will store. So conventional doctors, if they have somebody that isn't willing or won't take vitamin D every day, they'll do a loading dose of like 50,000 IUs of vitamin D to carry them throughout the week. So yes, those droppers can be a little bit finicky, but just account for it throughout the day or the rest of the week. So yeah, and then when they get older, you can give them the 1,000 IUs of vitamin D, and that's no problem. Just when they're little ones, 400 covers it.
That's good to know. Yeah, I didn't know, but I haven't needed it because my kids are way past my usage. But that's good to know, and it's nice to see we've had such an evolution in good supplements over the years, where we have access to so many more great products. It's awesome. So yeah, it's great,
and it's a good thing that you bring up that your kids may not like the capsule form, because I find that happens in pregnancy and postpartum too, that there are just some people that don't like to take capsules. And right now, even prenatal vitamins, you can buy them in a powdered form. So Seeking Health has a prenatal protein powder that's in a powdered form. I worked with a company called Needed to create a prenatal, and it's in a powdered form, and it doesn't have a protein powder associated with it. So that can be really nice in the first trimester when nothing is going down very easily. And, vitamin D you can get in a liquid drop. You can get zinc in liquid. Like there's always an option. I say, like, don't just not take it ask somebody if there's another form that you can take it in. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great advice. Yeah. So from a mental health perspective, I know you've talked from, definitely the nutrition. Is there anything else that you recommend, especially, if we talk like, new moms and trying to adjust to life, or even moms during pregnancy? Because, I have my prenatal program, and we get a lot of first time moms in there that are just so anxious and stressed about birth in
Yeah.
particular, right? Or the health of their baby. And so I like, so we're always doing some coaching on that aspect, but I would love to hear, any tips and words of wisdom that you have for our pregnant and or new moms adjusting to life?
Yeah, oh my gosh, where do we even start with this? Well,
I know.
I I mean, I can speak from the place of working with moms and also being somebody who had postpartum anxiety with my first, like, debilitating postpartum anxiety where I really didn't leave the house for a full year. So I understand the impact that anxiety has on the pregnancy. And I also understand the other side because with my second, I didn't have that. I had a completely different experience. So when it comes to feeling these anxieties, I think it's really important, especially if you're entering the last phase of your pregnancy. And even when you're a new mom, is to kind of put your blinders on, because what's going to happen is you're going to be fed a ton of conflicting information, and your people want to share the horror stories sometimes. So I remember when I was in my third trimester and people were telling me their horrible experience with birth and like, oh, good luck, or you're going to feel, oh, you're feeling okay now, you're going to feel really bad then. And people want to just offload what happened to them sometimes onto you. And it's really easy to internalize it because you don't know any better. You haven't been here before if this was your first. So what I like to say is like put those blinders on and find the books that make you feel empowered, look at the videos that make you feel empowered, reassess your social media feed and get rid of things that are triggering to you. One of my friends and clients, she actually just had to stay off of social media because she was having some like issues with confidence in her body. And she was reading things from midwives that were almost making her more scared. Like they weren't feeling empowering. They're like, oh, here's what could happen. So she got off the social media because that was really hard for her to be able to look at it from that perspective. So kind of put your blinders on and then find the resources that you trust that are giving you the information that builds you up and makes you feel more confident. So for me, I actually did home births, and I remember people just giving me all of their information about why that was a bad idea. And sometimes you have to set boundaries with people when you are a new mom or you are pregnant. Of thank you for sharing. I'm doing great. Don't need to hear anymore. Laying down the law, because otherwise you're just going to be overwhelmed with ideas of what you should do and what you're doing is wrong because everybody and their mom has an opinion on what would be best for you.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. And I don't know why people are called to, share their horror stories, but it's like surround yourself with the people and the things and the music, like even, like this is a great time to like really start meditating, right? And trying to, or
Mhm.
even just music. I love finding some like chakra music or something like that, even just now in life when it's like, okay, canceling out a lot of things and just putting something on that just makes you feel good. Um,
Yeah.
and so, do you have any, for our new moms? I think the same applies, of course,
Yeah.
right? Because there is like you turn on social media and you're like, oh, there's all these moms and their lives look perfect. And, it's like, well, the reality of it is, being a new mom it's hard. It's just hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, any advice on navigating that, you know, from the mental perspective? And I know we've talked nutrition, but, and I feel like I've heard this a lot, and I probably feel like this was me, although I think you kind of forget things, which is why you have more children.
Right. Right.
It's like, okay, when you're nursing, especially, like, and you're just like starving. Like, I remember feeling like I almost couldn't even get enough food in, let alone you just feel like you're pulled in a lot of directions. You're tired, you're taking care of this newborn, and, then once you have other ones, so then you're like, wait, well, how do I even like, you get so fixated on your kids and feeding them and nourishing them or whatever. And then you're like, oh, wait, but I have to actually like feed myself. And I'm going to add one more little thing because this is like a double edged, because we have some women who will actually lose a lot of weight, right? Because their
Yeah.
metabolism hasn't slowed back down from pregnancy. And then you get women who are trying so hard to lose weights, but they're not losing any weights. And, like I always say, is like, for a lot of women, that weight may not come off until you quit nursing because that's what your body needs. But from that mental perspective of like, any advice on how to deal with that?
Yeah. So I'll start with the first question was like, which is like, how do you enter new motherhood with the right expectations or like adjusted expectations? And what I like to talk about with people is having your good enough list. So, we all go into pregnancy and new motherhood. We do our laundry a couple times a week. We do our hair and makeup every day. Like we have these, like we work out 5 or 6 times a week, right? We have these things that we're used to. And then what happens when you have your baby is you almost think that like that standard is what should apply in the postpartum period. And having that expectation of what was and what is and have that be disjointed is really tough to handle. And it makes you feel like you're not doing enough or you're not as resilient as you think, and it's just very hard to sit in. So that good enough list is important. So what does good enough look like when it comes to the cleanliness of your house? Are you okay with letting the dishes sit for an extra night or two instead of doing them like you used to? Are you okay with maybe doing like a 10-minute hair and makeup routine instead of curling your hair every day and putting a full face of makeup on? Are you okay with maybe switching to 3 days a week for working out instead of working out 5 or 6 days a week? Is walking okay, even though you used to do CrossFit? So figuring out what your good enough is that's realistic and leads you to feel like you have wins under your belt versus comparing to what you used to do and thinking everything that you're doing is a failure. Right? Because I think we feel like we should be able to get so much done, but in reality, I mean, I remember when I was a new mom, it's like I look back at the day and I'm like, what did I even do with these 12 hours that I was awake? And it feels like it's not a lot, but what you're doing is navigating feeding, figuring out how to breastfeed for the first time. You are changing diapers every hour or two. You are cleaning spit up. My son had reflux. I was cleaning spit up all the time. You are trying to like feed yourself while handling another child that you're watching too. It's just like so much happens. And so that expectation, that good enough list for yourself, and it's going to look completely different depending on who you are and what's important to you and what you value. But then also realizing that you could probably maybe only get 3 things done in a day. And so one thing that I do with my work schedule is I figure out what are the 3 priorities for work that I need to get done every day, and what are the 3 things in my family life that I need to get done every day. It might be paying a bill, it might be that I exercise that day. It might be that I research a new baby wipe that I want to use, right? Like, what are 3 things that you can realistically do? And then everything else is a bonus. So really, really paring down what is expected. Now,
Yeah.
to your, yeah,
Oh,
do
go
you,
ahead. No, go ahead.
yeah. And then I was going to talk about your point about body image. And I think this is something that we are getting this distorted view, like you were talking about on social media, where people look like they have it perfect, or they dropped all this weight and that's an amazing thing, or it's super easy to lose weight when you're breastfeeding. We have this idea of what it's like, but then we have the reality of what it actually is and what it is like. And when it comes to body composition, the faster that you lose the weight doesn't mean that you're a winner. And a lot of times, if you're seeing these people that are bouncing back really quickly, doesn't mean that they're doing it in a way that is healthy or nourishing, or that they're actually happier because they lost the weight, or that they're mentally stable. And I say this because I work with women who have really significant postpartum anxiety, and they cannot even eat because they are so stressed out about baby, right? So on the appearance, they may look like they have it all together and they're like killing it with their nutrition and exercise routine, but they're losing the weight rapidly because they are so anxious and they can't even handle any food in their diet right now. So I think it's very easy because we have social media to see that highlight reel of somebody and not really know what's behind the scene. And same thing with nursing. We all have different bodies. We all respond differently to pregnancy. We have women that gain 60 pounds and then women that gain 25 or 30 pounds. And they're not doing a whole lot different. It's how their body's responding. Maybe they're having more water retention, right? So when it comes to breastfeeding and losing weight, yeah, absolutely. There are people that their body just wants to hold on to it for whatever reason until that nursing routine is coming towards the end or completely over. And then there are some people that nursing just seems to really make it melt off, and there's no right way. It's just how your body is responding, and having that patience and having that grace for yourself and loving what is, but also having goals is, I think, a beautiful thing to strive for. Because
Yeah.
we all have goals and there's nothing wrong with it, but to do it in like a realistic, healthy way is another.
Yeah, realistic and healthy. And I want to pull something out that you said a little bit ago was about values. And
Yeah.
I love doing value reflection with my clients, because when you actually like pause for a moment and you're like, wait, what are my top values in life? And for most moms, it's going to be family and
Yeah.
probably their health, somewhere in this, in the top five. And then, so really like just pausing for a moment and be like, wait, is my day reflecting my values? And
Mhm.
so many times that will just answer questions for you and help put things into perspective. And the other thing too is, and I know this comes up a lot in pregnancy, in my world with women, is they get so anxious, like especially when it's like
Yeah.
a workout, they want to keep working out, but then like their body's really telling them like, hey, it's time to shift things up. And
Mhm.
mentally they're like, no, but I have to keep doing this. And it's like, but it's only for a period of time. And I think we have to look at, that new mom phase again, whether it's a first or a third or a sixth or whatever it is, right? But every time you have another little one, like there's an adjustment to take place. But
Mhm.
knowing that they're all phases. Like motherhood is all these phases, right? And especially now that I'm like, I have a
Yeah.
teenager, I'm like, we're into a
Yeah.
whole nother phase of life, right? So it's like, instead of looking at it as like, with, I don't know, I guess in a negative way of really flipping things around and being like, look, oh my gosh, your body made this little miracle child. And
Mhm.
we forget that. Like
Mhm.
it's like you have a baby and it's like, boom, we want the body back. And obviously I teach women movement and how to strengthen their core correctly, because so many women, again, they're watching too much on social media and they're like, they want to get back really quickly, but then what happens? They end up injuring themselves. So it's
Yeah.
to be like, really, the more time you can really just turn yourself so you're prioritizing your values and slowly work to heal your body, like you'll be so happy you did on the other side. But it's hard. I get it. It's hard in that moment of like,
Yeah.
so I just think it's so good that we're bringing it up again and talking about it, because, moms, whether they've got a 2-month old or a 2-year old or a, 15-year old, sometimes they all just need that, reminder, because life just sometimes happens to us.
Yes.
And, we have
Yeah.
to be patient with ourselves. And actually, when you are more patient, I'm sure you see this all the time with your clients, the moms that will be more patient with themselves, no matter what stage of life they're in, are going to get better results quicker. Do you find that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, I always say like go slow to go efficient and strong
Mhm.
later, right? Because especially with pelvic floor, like if all of a sudden you're like, oh, 6-week clearance, I'm going to go run like I used to, that's going to be really difficult on your pelvic floor. And again, later on, you're going to have more issues with urinary continence and all of that kind of stuff. Versus if you are to wait and to work with somebody. And I'm so grateful for people like you that can help coach moms on what's efficient and what's realistic and what's right for them. You're just going to be so much better off. And yeah, that reconnecting with your body, I find yoga really helpful for new moms to actually slow down and connect with their new body, because sometimes it feels so foreign to you. You've never seen your body like this. And it can be easy to go to a place of like, figuring out what's wrong with it. But if you connect with it in a way that's really nourishing, like yoga and slowing down and being thankful and embracing different poses and even taking showers, like when you're a new mom, there's gonna be times where you literally have to hop in and hop out because that's all you have. But for the times where you have a little bit more time, to be able to actually like touch your body and reconnect. And you don't have to love every single part, but just give yourself that time and that space to say, thank you. Like, yeah, I have a little bit more of a pooch than I used to, but guess what? Like, I had a baby in there and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm doing healthy things to make me feel good mentally and physically. And that's enough. And that patience is so important because even when we're looking at weight loss, like realistically, after you lose the majority of the weight after baby comes out, right? You've got the placenta, you're losing an organ and water weight and blood and a baby. So you're going to have a good amount of weight loss right away. What's realistic to expect is like 1 or 2 pounds a week. And if you're nursing, 1 pound a week is a stable amount so that you're not going to jeopardize your milk supply. So I think when we think about this, like we look at people and how they are right after they have their baby, it's like, yeah, but for most of us, to be healthy and to have it be sustainable and to not impact our depletions even further, like we talked about, we have to do it more slowly and giving ourselves that love and grace as we approach the process.
Absolutely, so well said. And if we are continuing to deplete our body, then we're low on these nutrients, which
Yeah.
you started off talking about, which is so important to just check in and see what it is your body is needing, and finding a functional med doctor or asking your doctor to run some standard labs too. I know thyroid's a big one for moms.
Hmm.
Postpartum, a couple weeks ago, I did a episode talking about the hormone shifts that take place during pregnancy, and I talked a lot about, like, if you can, starting this stuff and bringing awareness before you even get pregnant. Again, ideal, but it's not possible for everybody. But that's something that definitely comes up a lot too, because things shift. And so giving your body grace and understanding that sometimes things just shift and happen, and it's nothing you did or didn't do. I think there's, like, as women, we tend to like replay, like, what did we do wrong
Hmm.
and this and that. And it's like, you did nothing wrong. It is just your body and pregnancy can stir up things or trigger things and stuff like that. And it's nothing you did or didn't do. So again, just things to, awareness things to remind our moms. So thank you so much, Stephanie. I want to ask you if there's anything else. I know we could probably continue talking for a long time, but
Yeah.
do you have any other, like, big, words of wisdom or things, something that you'd really like to make sure that we talk about today?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much. But I really want people to know that a lot of times, if you are feeling off and you talk to other moms, or maybe you even tell your provider about this, sometimes you might get dismissed as, oh, this is a new mom problem. Like all moms deal with fatigue, all moms deal with worry, all moms have like anxious spouts or these concerns. And a lot of these new mom worries, yes, it could be because you're a new mom and everything's kind of new and changing, but it could be something more. And so I really work with the moms who aren't satisfied with the answer of like, oh, it's just a new mom problem. And I don't think that we should embrace that, like, oh, it's just a new mom problem, because there really could be something going on deeper that is causing you this discomfort. And it could be emotional or physical. Like you mentioned, it could be your thyroid. So getting your full thyroid panel checked with the antibodies is so important, because we know that rates of thyroid issues are pretty high in moms, especially that postpartum thyroiditis, where those antibodies are high the first year postpartum. It could be that. It could be a mental health concern. Maybe, you think it's the baby blues, but you're past 2 weeks postpartum and you're still having the anxious thoughts and it's disrupting your life, right? It could be more than the baby blues. The baby blues isn't just the first 2 weeks postpartum. So if you're experiencing just any kind of discomfort or anxiety, don't take no for an answer, or this is just a new mom problem. Reach out to somebody like a therapist that's trained in perinatal mental health. Maybe look and ask your provider for those specialty tests to dig under the hood a little bit, and know that you really deserve to get the answers and feel better, and not just kind of walk through these really muddy waters in the postpartum period feeling like that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, and trusting your intuition, because we
Yes.
know. Like we really know. And I will tell you, I mean, I guess from my personal experience, I feel like, I feel like I've always had good intuition, but I remember after my first was born, I was like, wow, mom intuition is such a thing. It's such a thing.
Yeah.
So, especially for our newer moms, that maybe that's a new thing for you. Like if you have that feeling inside that you're like, no, there's just something, and it's like that, there's that fine balance, right? Of like, we don't want to go
Mhm.
over the top, but if you
Mhm.
keep having that inkling, it could be as simple as your thyroid, or you have a little imbalance in nutrients, which are
Mhm.
simple fixes. It's really quite simple. So it's just working with the right people to help you get there. I know it's not all in your head because there's so
No.
much shifts that take place, after having a
Yeah.
baby, and there's just a lot. it's so
It is a lot, and you don't have to do it alone, and you shouldn't do it alone. So, yeah, make sure if you're not getting taken seriously and you're really listening to that intuition that you ask somebody else and find help.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Will you let everyone listening know where they can find more about you and check you out on Instagram and all of that?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Steph Greunke. That's StephGreunke. And I am over at the Whole 30. I produce content for them and education over at whole30.com, Whole 30 Families. And Steph Greunke is my website. So you can find me there. And I do some private consulting. And I'm also over at the Dr. Mom podcast as
Yeah, I
well.
wanted you to
So,
mention that. Yeah,
yeah.
really.
So I do a podcast with a co-host who's a naturopathic doctor who specializes in pediatrics. So we have expert interviews, and then we just kind of share our personal and professional experience with a wide range of issues related to preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and families.
I love it. It's a great podcast. So I highly recommend all of our moms tune into that. So thank you so much for joining
Thank
me
you.
today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.